everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be doing an album review. I'm going to be taking a look at this record today, which is Plastic Ono Band by John Lennon. So yes, I'll just be doing my usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about the album, then showing you my final copy of it here, and then looking at each of the album's tracks in detail. So this was John Lennon's first I guess proper solo album after the breakup of the Beatles. Although saying that, he had probably been the most prolific out of all of the solo Beatles up till this point in terms of kind of solo releases, releasing 3 experimental albums with Yoko in 1968 and 1969. He'd also released a string of slightly more commercial singles as well, like in 1969, while the Beatles were still kind of publicly at least like together, including Cold Turkey, Give Peace a Chance, and in the February of 1970, like the brilliant Instant Karma. However, in April 1970, everything famously unravelled with the release of Paul McCartney's debut album, McCartney, which was accompanied by a press release, which basically was taken as the official announcement that the Beatles were no more and would not be recording together, and had no plans to work together in the future. So then, in the summer of 1970, Lennon and Ono went under some Primal screen therapy under a bit of a madcap doctor called Dr. Arthur Janoff, and basically the whole premise of kind of like the Primal sort of therapy was to unlock cure people by sort of unlocking sort of like the pent-up emotion and angst and anger they had by sort of making them essentially physically relive some of like their kind of like childhood traumas, which for Lennon, was like plentiful in terms of being abandoned by his father, then needing to go and live with his Aunt Mimi, and then of course the death of his mother Julia when he was 17 years old. Now this Primal therapy took place, over the summer of 1970, initially in London, and then they moved over to LA to sort of undergo some further sessions, but they never actually completed their full course of therapy. I think Lennon was always a bit not sure what the word is, but he kind of went all in on something and then very quickly lost interest and moved on to the next thing, and that definitely happened with this therapy, which is probably not the best thing to be kind of dabbling in and then sort of immediately retreating from, because essentially he didn't sort of finish his full course, and Dr. Janoff essentially said that they opened Lennon up and sort of released all this emotion, but then didn't have the time to sort of piece him back together Dr. Janoff says. So basically Lennon was left in quite a fragile state going into the autumn of 1970, and that's when this album starts to get made in September 1970. He starts working on it, I believe it in Abbey Road Studios, very much with a kind of stripped back, pared down band lineup, consisting of Klaus Voormann on bass, who was an old friend of Lennon's and the Beatles more generally from their Hamburg days, and then you had Ringo on drums. So it was a very much a pared down lineup of people I think Lennon felt comfortable with, felt friendly with, and who he knew it would be relatively easy to get on with and work together. Now also Phil Spector was enlisted to produce the album, who had worked with Lennon, I believe, on the Instant Karma single, and I think it was also Lennon who had got Phil Spector involved with salvaging the Beatles' Let It Be album. But by all accounts, Phil Spector was very absent for the making of most of this album, and you can kind of tell because it is quite an uncharacteristic Spector production. It's very stripped back. There's very little embellishment on this album, and that could very much be explained by his apparent absence. He only arrived I think about 2 weeks into the making of the album, and considering the album only took 4 weeks to make, he really wasn't there. He really wasn't there a lot off the time. So the album was released on the 11th of December with a great cover alongside a similar album by Yoko with a very similar cover, except it's Yoko who's sort of leaning like on John, like it's like the other way around, and then the back cover is a picture of Yoko like as a child, like rather than John here. Commercially it did quite well, this album, albeit not quite as well as McCartney and Harrison's solo offerings from 1970. So it peaked at number 8 in the UK and number 6 in America. Now, critical reception at the time was mostly positive. I think a lot of the music press had kind of decided that Lennon was the cool, acceptable Beatle to like, and that it was McCartney who was the kind of like the enemy, like who should be criticised like at all costs. So this album did get like quite a lot of like rave reviews, but also some mixed reviews like as well. It was quite okay, explain like at like the end, like once I've gone through like all like the tracks, but it was quite a like revolutionary album, this, like in many ways. Like few artists had made music this personal, emotional, or even primitive before, but like some critics though felt that it was just too personal, it was too self-centered and just too difficult like to listen to. But as I said though, many other critics, and I think most critics, felt that this stacked up rather well, particularly when compared with McCartney's rather lightweight debut album offering from April 1970. And the album has continued to be revered. It was ranked at number 23 on Rolling Stone's 500 albums greatest albums list, which is quite an achievement actually. 23 is really high for like a list like of like that nature. It's maybe gone. I think in further iterations like of like the list it's maybe started to fall down slightly, but it's still definitely Lennon's most revered solo album here. So anyway, I will try to show you my vinyl copy of it here. As I said, I've already shown the front cover and the back cover, and there's really not a lot more to it than that. This is just a reissue. It says the 2015 reissue. This, I think, when they were reissuing all of Lennon's albums. So it's not the new deluxe version or anything, which I haven't got the box set off, but I have listened to some of the stuff in it, and there's some great stuff like in like the box set, particularly the evolutionary documentaries in the Lennon box sets like that have been released so far are really well done, like really insightful, piecing together like of how the tracks kind of like came to be. But yeah, no, this is just a bog standard vinyl reissue of it. So anyway, I will now go over each of the album's tracks in detail. I'll score each song out of 10 and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album. So the first song to kick us off is the striking Mother, which is it's quite a striking song, this, I think, in terms of, it starts off with the kind of like the funeral bells, and I think there's like four funeral bells that go off, a very bleak start to like the album, and then the song kicks in, and there's just so much space in this song, and like the arrangement is just drums, bass, and Lennon's piano. There's not a single note like of guitar like on here, and they just play it very straight for like the most part. Quite a heartbreaking song as well. Essentially, about Lennon's childhood, and structured quite effectively around the first verse is like just actually like his mother Julia, like mother you had me, but I never had you, that goes like the lyric, and then the second verse is about his dad, Alf Lennon, who had abandoned him age 5, and during like the making of this album, Lennon had his last meeting with his father, which really didn't go well. I think Lennon again was very much in a very emotionally vulnerable place, and basically just I think basically threatened like his father, like threatened to kill him actually. So it very much was not a successful meeting like at all. So he's addressed on this one, and then the kind of like the final verse is probably the most heartbreaking of all, really, where Lennon kind of blames himself for this. He sings like, "Children, don't do what I have done." And then it just then builds up to like this great outro where, again, I couldn't listen to it every day. It's quite an uncomfortable, like unsettling outro, particularly like his like vocal is just it's powerful, really. And then you've then got some excellent drum fills from Ringo, just sort of again building the tension, and it works like really well. This was a single as well from the album, believe it or not. Very weird choice for the single. I mean, there's probably not a lot of single worthy material in here, but this probably is not one of the more single ready bluesy songs like on the album. I think it might have only been like a US single, and it peaked at number 19 like on the charts there. But no, Mother, good opening track to the album, I think.
Hold on, John, hold on.
And then for the second track, we get a real kind of gear shift with the song Hold On, which is a lot more softer in tone. It's basically, again, it's still quite stripped back. I think it is just John on an electric guitar, and then you've then got Ringo doing some very subdued drums, and Klaus Voormann just kind of blends into like the background and into the mix like off like the song. It's a really lovely song, this Hold On. I think the guitar playing is excellent. I love the kind of tone on it, the simplicity of it. Reminds me a bit of like Don't Let Me Down kind of thing. It's got like kind of quite soulful kind of chords on it, which I really like, and I do really like the sentiment like off like the song as well. It's essentially a kind of hold on sort of song. Everything will be all right, like you're gonna make it through like this sort of tricky situation kind of thing. And yeah, it's just a really lovely performance. On those evolutionary documentaries I mentioned earlier there, they really struggled with this song. Like they originally had a lot more like involved, like the arrangement, the drums were like a lot more pronounced, and everything was just a bit more loud on it. But I really like how they kind of stripped it back, like for this version. The only thing I don't like about it, and you can probably predict like what I'm going to say, is the Cookie Monster reference, like that he does like in like the middle like of like the song. It's one of that. There's a couple of moments on this album where, you know, it is a very serious album, this, and a very much it's a Primal Therapy album. But then there's a couple of moments where he does let out his sense of humour a bit, so I can kind of appreciate it for that. That it's kind of like that old kind of like the John of 1965 is slightly wacky kind of zany sense of humour coming through, like with like his like cookie like kind of like reference like in like the middle, but I just feel it kind of ruins the song a little bit, and especially, you know, hearing it completely out of context is just like, what's he done that for? You know, he's ruined, well, not ruined, but he's tainted what would have otherwise been a really great 10 out of 10 song for me. So yeah, Hold On would get a 9 out of 10. Okay, next up on the album is called I Found Out. Now, this is the first real rocker like on the album, and it just sounds and like there's two main rockers on here. This is definitely my favourite, like off like the two, but they both have a very similar kind of loud, dirty, dingy feel that is quite ahead of its time. You know, a lot of kind of grunge bands in like the 90s would kind of try and go back to like this kind of sound, like very primitive sound, like not punk, it's not punk this, but it's a kind of, it's got that kind of basement rock kind of feel to it, which is just great, and that comes through from Lennon's guitar playing, but also Ringo's excellent drumming like on like this song. The lyrics are essentially about kind of seeing through kind of false idols, and how it kind of like covers Lennon's experiences with organised religion, and how this was like a bitter like experience of whether it be things from like the Maharishi, like those kind of people like he was like involved with, but then also touches on like again like his childhood trauma, like and how that kind of shaped him like as like an artist. These things like, I heard something about my ma and my pa, they didn't want me so they made me a star. One of the more like heartbreaking lyrics again like on the album, but the song rocks. You know, this is a pure rock song. It's a really solid performance, and like I'd be giving I Found Out like an 8 out of 10.
Working class hero is something to be.
Okay, next up on the album is probably the most famous song actually like on the album. It's never a single, but it's appeared on a few Lennon compilations since. It's a Working Class Hero, and this one's essentially is just an acoustic song. This one here, again about touching on childhood, but this song like specifically is about like the school system and the myth of kind of social mobility, and just that wider sense of like if like you're kind of working class, you'll always be working class. You're never going to end up like sort of like at like the top of the tree like kind of thing. thing. Like he sings, yeah, like there's some great lyrics on this, like when they've tortured and scared you for 20 odd years and then they expect you to pick a career. Yeah, just some of his most quotable lines, like in like a song which is, yeah, very stripped back. It's just Lennon and acoustic. They kind of actually, I think, yeah, like there's a bit of like an edit job like on this as well. He kind of recorded it sort of like, I think he kind of patched in like a second verse, which wasn't in like the original like version, like off like the song. But the song does come in for some criticism, you know. I think and especially like retrospectively, like in a sense, I think some interpretation could be that it's almost like looking down like on like working class people. He sings like, if like you want to be a hero, then just follow me, which is yeah, like it's an interesting line, like, but like, is he kind of like looking down? I see it more like as a kind of observational song rather than a kind of personal like sort of song. But also like at like the same time, like Lennon, yeah, like really wasn't kind of working class again. Like some ways he had, although he did have a lot of trauma like in like his childhood, they weren't financially, like the Lennon family like weren't financially struggling. He had quite a middle class like upbringing. So like a song like this kind of then by sort of adds to that kind of myth that, yeah, Lennon was a working class hero kind of thing. So I kind of see it as more of a kind of like an observational song rather than a kind of like personal song, like rather than like Lennon calling like himself like a working class hero. And then side one closes off with the song Isolation, which is a really, really nice song. It's it's like a piano ballad. This one here, like for like the most part, concerning Lennon's feelings of loneliness, like at like the end, like off like the Beatles, with a bit of a kind of money can't buy you happiness sort of vibe, but it's not too on the nose. It's not too kind of obvious. It's still kind of like there's enough here that I think that anyone can relate to this song, like if like you're feeling like a bit lonely. But then there's also some lyrics that are a bit indulgent as well, in terms of like there's lines about like just a boy and a little girl trying to change the whole wide world, which makes me cringe a little bit. You know, it's about like, oh yeah, like me and Yoko just trying to, yeah, like changing the world kind of thing, and that kind of, yeah, sort of, I guess again retrospectively feeds a little bit into this kind of like Saint John, like Saint Lennon kind of like image, like kind of thing. But the song is good though, and particularly the bridge section, which is a lot harsher in tone. It's a real change in tone, like for like the bridge. And again, I love the production on it, where it's you've got a slightly kind of clunky double-tracked vocal. I suspect this is a song that they basically just had to produce themselves because Phil Spector wasn't around, and it's got a slightly clunky kind of double tracking like on like the vocal, like sort of like in like either ear, and like they're not quite in sync, but it just gives it a real sense of magic and a sense of urgency. I think like I think that had a slightly more polished up version, you just would have been missing that. So no, like Isolation, definitely one of the better tracks like on the album for me. Okay, and then side two opens up with the song Remember, which is a driving piano song. This one here really just gallops along like quite well, like this one here. And again, a good structure. Like, I mean, the verses are, yeah, the galloping, a bit plodding, but then the chorus like is like a really good release, and that kind of like that lyrics like kind of like, I guess like have like kind of like sort of like follow that contrast. The lyrics kind of like in like the verses concern like the primal therapy and sort of remembering like events like from like your childhood, like and like that. But then the chorus like is like as I said, like a real release, sort of noting that, yeah, like don't feel sorry about the way it's gone, you know, like just like have to deal like with like your past and like not let it affect the way that you're living like in like the present kind of thing. Again, this is another one of the tracks like on the album where you get a little hint of Lennon's kind of sense of humour coming through, like in amongst like all like the kind of like the personal anguish, with that kind of that like is like remember the 5th of November, and then the big explosion to end the song. Again, for me, I'm not too crazy about that. I think again it just sort of like the real shift in tone is kind of a bit jarring, like for me. And again, they really did that, I think, because the original original take of this goes on for about like 7-8 minutes. I think they just needed something to end it with, and yeah, they just like edited like that wee bit on there. So yeah, it doesn't end too well, this song, and like it probably does, and like it probably like does like go on like a little bit too long, but I do genuinely like the song like while it's on, like for the most part. Interestingly fact of this one, the origins of this actually date back to the Abbey Road sessions, and specifically the Beatles song Something, because there's a few early takes of that where they kind of break into like a long kind of jam coda like at like the end of Something, which feels very out of place. Like when like you hear it like when like you hear like the full take, like which is available like on YouTube, it's quite jarring that then they suddenly go from Something basically into like a slowed down version of this. Like Lennon starts kind of plodding away like on like the piano, and yeah, it never went anywhere like with like the Beatles, and he obviously just recycled it for this album. But no, it's a decent song though. Remember, would get an 8 out of 10.
Love is real.
Okay, now we get possibly also the most popular song. It's either this like or Working Class Hero. Like I'd say like are the two most popular ones like on the album. Song called Love, which for me is maybe a little bit overrated. Like on the album, I would say. I think yeah, I'm probably in the minority here where I say I just find this song a little bit overrated, a little bit too kind of sentimental and twee kind of thing. Yeah, like I don't know, it kind of fades in really slowly as well. It's nice piano from Phil Spector, but it's just, again, it's a very simple song about all the things that love is. Love is real, real is love is feeling, feeling love. They're just very, yeah, boring, simplistic lyrics. I guess it's kind of soft and delicate, like it's a nice change of tone for this album, but there's also just something about it that just doesn't quite fit in like on the album for me either. So yeah, Love for me would get a 7 out of 10. It's definitely not one of my favourite Lennon solo songs. Okay, now the next one up on the album is the second of the two rockers like on the album, which is Well, Well, Well. Now this is definitely the weaker one for me. It's definitely too long, like as a song. It goes on for about 5-6 minutes. It has probably the most screamy kind of vocal like on the album as well, like either this like on Mother, but maybe this one, and the lyrics on it are just a bit weak as well, essentially describing a number of quite mundane events like in like Lennon's life. He says like, I took my loved one out to dinner so we could get a bite to eat, and though we both had been much thinner, she looked so beautiful I could eat her. I mean, it's definitely not the most profound lyrics anyone's like ever come up with, or certainly like not the kind of lyrics that you would think that some Primal Therapy would sort of like conjure up kind of thing. But I guess again it's maybe just that them having fun. The plus sides though are that it absolutely rocks. Like again, the band are in absolutely fine form here, and particularly like that Lennon vocal bit like at like the end, like even though it's not really my thing, you can definitely tell this inspired a lot of kind of grunge and kind of quite visceral kind of music that was very much not in vogue like in like 1970, or like not even like invented like in 1970. So yeah, I can kind of appreciate this for being quite an inventive song, but it's just not really my thing.
Look at me.
Okay, and then we get a track called Look at Me, which is a acoustic track, this one here, very similar in style to Julia, like the Beatles song, which is no ironic thing because this one actually dates back to the White Album sessions. He wrote this for the White Album. I don't think it was demoed for the White Album. It's definitely not on any of the Isha demos, I don't think. But I think they basically just decided, or like Lennon decided either not to show it to the other Beatles or to demo it, just because it was too similar. Like he'd already written Juilliard and Dear Prudence and all these kind of Donovan finger-picking style songs that he felt another one was maybe just going to be overkill. So this one ends up being like on this album, and it just feels a bit of filler to me. Like I think lyrics are quite questioning, full of self-doubt, and that, but also then kind of also a sense of self-awareness as well. He sings like, who am I? Nobody knows but me. Like goes and like I think like the final verse. So he goes on a bit of a journey like with this song, which is nice, but yeah, it for me just kind of reeks of album filler, unfortunately.
God is a concept.
Okay, and then we reach what really is the kind of proper closing track on the album, which is God, which is an absolutely monumental track, I think, like in like the Lennon discography, probably one of his most important solo songs, like I would say, and definitely one of his best and most striking statements, like as like an artist. Really, it's a stream of, I think, some of his most quotable lines, like in like one song starts with this great observation, this great line, like God is a concept by which we measure our pain, and then goes into this list of all the things that he doesn't believe in, these kind of statements, and like I love the way it gets progressively more shocking, like as like it goes on. It kind of starts quite quite mundane stuff, like I don't believe in tarot and stuff like that, but then ends with that immortal line, I don't believe in Beatles, I just believe in me, Yoko and me. It's just really well constructed, I think, like as like a song, like as like a piece, really, and then ends with this kind of like the slightly more sort of drawn out kind of final verse, like the dream is over and what can I say, I was the walrus but now I'm John. So many great lines like on it, and it's just got this kind of it's like the ending anyway, that just is this great resigned kind of feeling of the dream is over, the Beatles are done, the kind of idealism like off like the 60s is kind of gone, and we're now in a kind of the world's a bit more off a dangerous place, and a bit like we just didn't succeed, like the whole kind of peace and love thing just didn't go anywhere, just didn't succeed, and we just kind of have to live with that sort of thing. It's but more than that, like it's a kind of graceful closing statement, like on like the end, like of the Beatles era, really. So God is a fantastic song for me, and you've also got on here some great musicianship. You've got Billy Preston guesting on piano, who adds some kind of gospel-y flavour to like the piano, and then of course Ringo's drumming with his fills, particularly like in like the middle bit. Like every fill is slightly different, and he kind of alters it like every time, and it's just absolutely brilliantly done. Great work all round from everyone like involved here. God, a 10 out of 10. But then the album does finish though with another track, which is a proper track listed like on the album. It's called My Mummy's Dead, and it's basically a 50-second track set to the tune of Three Blind Mice, recorded very roughly. This was just an acoustic demo that he done. It's a 50-second snippet thrown on the end of the albums, a la Her Majesty kind of thing, really. So it's not worth scoring like in like its own right. I think it bookends the album well, kind of referring back to like sort of like the opening track, Mother, of course, it just again leaves you with a very kind of bleak like sort of taste like in like the mouth, but that's definitely what like he was going for with this whole album. So My Mummy's Dead, like a nice a good like closing statement there, like on the album for me. Okay, so overall, this album would get 80%, so I think this is definitely John Lennon's best solo album. I think the writing on here is deeply personal, the production is great, it's not dated at all. I think some of Lennon's other solo albums from the 70s have a kind of quite dated feel to the production, but this one feels visceral, and like it fits the themes, like off like the lyrics like as well. And vocally, he sounds excellent, like on here, both when he's doing like quite soft songs like Look at Me and Love, but also when he's just letting it rip, like on like sort of like the slightly more slightly more screamy songs like on the album. What also makes this album really good is the melodies as well. I think, like melodically, Lennon has not wrote songs as good as this since the White Album. Kind of 1969 was a bit of an absent year for Lennon. He wasn't too much on like Abbey Road, and even like kind of like the Get Back sessions. He only really brought like Don't Let Me Down like to like the table to that. So this was definitely like the most prolific he'd been like since like 1968. And he just comes up with like a great collection of songs. Really. Now, I'm not going to say this is a flawless album. I do think it tails off, like on side 2, and personally, like the middle like of side 2, and it's definitely not the type of album that I could listen to like every day. You kind of have to be like in like the right kind of mindset for this album, and maybe have not heard it for like a little while. But I do think this is definitely like Lennon's crowning achievement, like as like a solo artist here. So yes, I hope you have enjoyed the review of it. I'd be interested to know what you think of this album down below in the comment section, and I'll see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.